Community through business, building relationships, and building Waterloo Region. 570 News presents Business to Business, powered by Save on Energy. Here's your host, Glenn Pelletier.
And welcome to Business to Business. Great to have you with us, powered by Save on Energy. A little bit different kind of a show this afternoon as our co-hosts, Greg DeRocher and Ian McLean, are broadcasting live from the annual general meeting of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in Kelowna, BC. And Greg is on the line now from the beautiful Delta Grand Okanagan Hotel in Kelowna. Hello, Greg. Hello, Greg. Can you hear me? Hi, Greg. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right.
You got us both there, buddy?
We got some music playing still. We can get that down. There we go. Hi, Greg. How are you?
Hey, I'm very good. Actually, Ian is here.
All right. There was some speculation that Ian wouldn't be there in time, given some late arrival at the airport. But Ian McLean as well. Great to have you with us from the Delta Grand Okanagan. You guys are in Kelowna for the annual general meeting of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. We'll be chatting a little bit later in the program with Perrin Beattie, the former Tory cabinet minister who is now the president of the Canadian Chamber. And gentlemen, the AGM is a very significant get-together of the Canadian Chamber. It brings together chamber members from right across the country. Can you just give us an idea of what the AGM is all about and what you're trying to accomplish, what the Canadian Chamber is trying to accomplish, and you as presidents and CEOs of your respective chambers?
Yeah. Well, I think what we'll hear from Perrin is there's over 450 chambers of commerce and boards of trade across the country. And this is our annual conference to discuss policy resolutions that are generated, frankly, for the most part, from member chambers. So it covers any number of issues from economic development, taxation, social issues. So as an example, our chambers have worked on or are looking at issues that range from homelessness, and we put a resolution solving that, infrastructure, and manufacturing. So we've got we've got a number of resolutions. I think there's 75 that are under consideration this weekend, but this afternoon and tomorrow morning.
And so the debating really starts this afternoon on these resolutions, and you know it's an interesting format where the individual provinces get together, the chambers get together, and discuss the resolutions as a whole, and decide what is the best for their particular province and then their particular area. So it's a healthy process of policy development that's in the best interest of business across the country.
Are there any resolutions on the table that have got your particular attention?
Yeah, well, we put one in particular around manufacturing and making the accelerated cost allowance, which has been in the federal budget the last two budgets, making that more permanent and making the regional economic development agencies make sure they have a focus on manufacturing, which is obviously very important to our neck of the woods. And then one that I think is good or is important to all chambers is around infrastructure and communities, and the sense that there is infrastructure, both whether it's business infrastructure like gateways to the U.S. and other jurisdictions, right through to community building, which we know is so important, and there is an infrastructure deficit. So those are a couple that we're obviously very focused on that we think affect the region of Waterloo, but also more broadly the country as a whole.
Also, Glenn, later in the show we're going to bring on Ken Cobley, who is the president and CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. He's going to talk about the economic impact of the flooding out there and how the rebuilding is going, and some of the really interesting stories on the devastation to business out there.
All right, you guys hang on the line. It's Greg and Ian. Greg, the president and CEO of the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce. Ian McLean, president and CEO of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. Your hosts on Business to Business, along with myself. Joining us now, and we are very proud to have them with us as our main sponsor, Save on Energy, is John Finch. He is the supervisor of energy conservation at Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot. Great to be here.
We've really enjoyed talking about Save on Energy. It's a great program, and let's continue that discussion now.
Yeah, well, we're very pleased to have John here today, and John works with his colleagues Jeff and Sarah, and Sarah's been on the last couple of shows talking about the Energy Symposium, and probably a good place to start today. We're going to talk a little bit in a few minutes about sort of how the whole program works and specifically how people can get connected to it. But let's give us an update of you had this symposium. I think it was yesterday, which would have been Wednesday.
That's right. And
so tell us about how it went, how many people were there, and the types of things that were happening at the symposium.
Yeah, Ian, it was a great day. It really was. It started off right away at 9:00, and as Sarah, I know Sarah was on the show last week and described the show. We had over 60 exhibitors.
Wow.
All displaying energy efficient products and solutions. So great variety, great number of exhibitors, really strong on that end. Of course, it all comes down to the customers, and I saw a tremendous number of our customers there.
Mm-hmm.
There were, at times, several hundred people there, and they were all there to learn more about energy efficiency, and it was just a perfect place to go to get that introduction.
John, what you said about several hundred people there? Give us an idea of the kinds of people that go to these symposiums.
Yeah, right across the board from all different segments, but it's all large business. It's all our larger customers. So anyone of a decent sized building who uses a relatively large amount of electricity, those are the ones we targeted. And whether it was from manufacturing segment,
mm-hmm.
property managers, universities, colleges, right across the board. So it was a real mix. We really tried to design the show so that there's something for everyone. And I really do believe that we succeeded on that again.
Okay, now, you did target this particular symposium more at the large or medium and large size businesses, but I mean, many of our listeners are that small and medium size, and it's probably a good transition. Is many of the programs that you have, and I've used several of them in doing a home renovation as an example, which as a consumer or as a small business owner, many of these programs are transferable. So you don't have to be a large business to get the benefit of doing getting the assessment and taking advantage of these programs. So maybe walk through. So I'm have my own small business, which I do, and many others listening do. What's the steps? Walk us through. You contact Save on Energy, either phone call or through the website. What happens next? Who gets in touch with them? Who tells them what the opportunities are for savings or to reduce their energy costs and to make the investments in infrastructure? Walk us through that process for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, it's a critical process there, and whether you're a large business or you're a small business, we'll treat everyone the same. And essentially, if you have a question and you want to learn more about how you can lower your electricity bills, you call into Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro, Cambridge and North Dumfries Hydro, or Waterloo North Hydro, and you ask to speak to the people in charge of energy conservation. All three utilities have departments now with support and staff. And we would sit down and walk through any questions you had or anything that you wanted to achieve. We would walk you through the process of essentially assessing your building. So
you'd come in and say, hey, look, you've got old transformers for your fluorescent lighting system, and here's what we think that you could make some savings, or you need to or could improve your HVAC system and save and many of those. But it's very practical, very easy to understand for a business person. You don't have to.
It is, and we have that support staff, so we have technical resources. If you're a small business, a medium-sized business, or a large business, the first questions we're going to ask you are, what equipment do you have in your building?
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna review that equipment with you on the phone. We'll come in, do a site visit potentially,
and then give you a plan.
And
John, final question.
Yeah.
If you, off the top of your head, what is the most glaring or most obvious mistake, for lack of a better word, that small business owners are subject to?
What do they leave on the table?
Like, what's the easiest way off the top for them to save money on their hydro costs?
Well, a couple answers, but first of all, lighting is definitely one of the low-hanging fruits and something that's prevalent in most businesses. A lot of businesses haven't looked at it, and going beyond that, even looking at controls, lighting controls, and
automatically turn them on and off.
Right, and even greater than that, I would say just awareness. Businesses should be aware of what they spend on electricity every month and be speaking to their electric utility to look for opportunities.
Yeah.
All right, John, thank you so much for your time today. John Finch was our guest. He is the supervisor of energy conservation at Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro.
Yeah.
As we continue this regular installment of Save on Energy.
And we'll look forward to having John. We'll be back over the coming weeks, and Sarah will be back, and Jeff. So we'll have the three of them sharing with us what the programs are, how the business can get connected, and ultimately how to reduce your energy consumption, which is good for the environment, but most importantly for most businesses, how to save money. And that's we'll look forward to that over the coming weeks.
We'll be right back with more Business to Business powered by Save on Energy. Call in with your questions at star 570 570 2545 or 1-800-570-5715. It's not just what you know, it's who you know. Connecting community through business. This is Business to Business on 570 News. Powered by Allstream. All local, all relevant. Allstream.com. Here's your host, Glenn Pelletier.
So we'll go. Oh, here we're somewhere. Straight. Oh, okay, going straight in.
Welcome back to Business on 570 News. Well, a couple of days ago, Perrin Beatty, the former Tory cabinet minister, the former president of the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters, and now the president of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, was good enough to speak with us in advance of the AGM in Kelowna. And Mr. Beatty, thank you very much for sharing your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Perrin, it's Ian McLean, and we both Greg and I. Greg's actually on a flight out to Kelowna as we speak, and I'll be leaving shortly. You're in Vancouver, so we're all headed to Kelowna. I'm pretty excited about getting together. It's always great to get together with our chamber colleagues. So I first want to talk about you and your role as president of the Canadian Chamber. How do you see your role in supporting local chambers and moving broader national issues that affect business? How do you put all those things together?
Ian, the strength of the chamber movement in Canada comes from its grassroots nature. It's the fact that we have some 450 chambers and boards of trade across Canada that represent over 200,000 businesses. Every size, every sector, every part of Canada, the vast majority of them small and medium sized. So it's really Main Street Canada. What we do at our AGM each year is to have delegates coming from across the country to debate policy and to talk about issues that have to be national in scope, where we can have an impact on federal government policy or on international issues. And then the Canadian Chamber takes that forward over the course of the coming year. And we'll also be hearing from experts. We'll be hearing, for example, from Premier Clark, who's the Premier of British Columbia, who will be talking to us about some of the initiatives they're taking in BC. The Governor-General will be speaking to us, and a wide range of others.
Yeah, and that's I guess indicative. We have some really national figures that want to come and speak to the members, and I'm always struck, and I think we always try and repeat. I certainly do when I'm talking about our local chamber of how inclusive it is of business right across our community, and the vast majority of business being small and medium sized. And I get maybe the question that always springs to mind. When government talks about small business, and so the census or Stats Canada, they talk about a small business of being 500 employees or less. For us on the ground, and you would know this, it's really, you're talking with a lot of businesses are 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 employees. So
Absolutely.
So what are the things that we do to try and get the message that a small business is really a husband and wife running a business or a family-owned business that have very, very few employees and have to do a lot of different things, and try and get that message through to government that sometimes doesn't understand what it's like to be a small business in Canada?
Well, and I think that's the key. So very often when, government with the best of intentions writes new regulations or establishes new forms or thinks of other things that business should be doing, and they don't realize that for the average small business in Canada, you're talking about an enterprise which is really small, where people are working really long hours, where they have a lot of skin in the game in terms of the investment that they've made. They may have mortgaged their house to be able to open up the business, and that every single new bit of red tape, every new regulation, every new requirement that's piled on top of them just makes it that much more difficult for them to stay afloat. And such a high percentage of small businesses in Canada don't survive. So the goal of the government needs to be, how do we create an environment that's supportive, that recognizes the special needs of the smallest businesses in the country and encourages them to be successful, because they're really the heart and soul of so many communities in Canada, and they create so many of the jobs that Canadians look for.
Yeah, and so, and I won't ask you to comment specifically on a couple of the resolutions that are coming from our area. Cambridge and ourselves have put forward, because obviously the resolution or the policy forum hasn't happened yet, but a couple of them, and I think this speaks to some things that are bubbling up from the local chambers. One is with respect to manufacturing. What's left of manufacturing in this country is advanced manufacturing. So how do we support manufacturers? And so one of our resolutions that we talk about is calling on the federal government to keep the accelerated cost allowance and support manufacturing in a variety of different ways. The other one that is interesting, and I think every community across the country is talking about infrastructure now. So one of our resolutions also talks about how we facilitate that for communities with things like enhancing the opportunity for public-private partnerships. So without going into the specifics, those are the types of things that are coming from the local chamber. Talk about just what the process is to that those 450 member chambers would go through to pass resolutions, and then what happens when it's passed. Over to you. What do you and your staff do to try and move those issues forward?
Ian, those are very good examples of the grassroots involvement of the chamber movement. These are the things that affect communities right across the country, and they're the types of issues we're hearing as I go across the country talking to local chambers and meeting with local businesses. What will happen is that you'll get to Kelowna. You'll have a chance to meet with many of your colleagues, for example, from Ontario, first of all. There will be a caucus meeting. It's an opportunity for you to talk to people regionally from your province about these are the issues of particular interest to us, and we would look for your support in terms of trying to move this forward. Then as we get into the weekend, we'll be having a full debate on each of these resolutions and really hearing from across the country. It requires a 2/3 majority for a resolution to pass. They stay on the books for 3 years. If it's not renewed at the end of the 3 years, it falls off. So we have at any one time somewhere in the neighborhood of 175 resolutions on the books. We, following our annual meeting each year, go to each of the affected government departments and let them know what resolutions have been passed that affect their departments. And take the message out there. And then we would also be taking the message out in a series of meetings throughout the year with government, and as we're talking publicly through the news media or to local chambers, and trying to encourage a public discussion of these issues that chambers have identified as being critical to community life in their area.
You are listening to Business on 570 News, powered by Save-On Energy, and we're in conversation with Perrin Beatty, the president of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, it's important for people to understand how we make those things work. And you do a lot of great work both nationally and internationally and across provincial capitals as well. But you also support us when we need help, when we're talking to our local MPs or elected officials and government as well, by giving your research staff help us with information, and so it really is a group effort. You're the national spokesperson for our organization, do a great job of that, but you do support the local chambers as we go through this process. So appreciate you running through what that looks like, and there's a lot of big issues that face our country, and as we move forward and continue to see globalization. So that leads me to a segue to what's a very important local story for the region of Waterloo, but more broadly, it's a provincial, a national, and an international story, and that's BlackBerry, of course. So, what I guess I wanted to sort of ask you was, you've had a very interesting and spectacular career, including being a federal cabinet minister, and at one time one of those portfolios was as communications minister, and that in those days I think involved telecommunications and a part of what would be now the BlackBerry, where BlackBerry was situated. So I'm interested in your personal view of how this the whole issue of the sale of BlackBerry and the role that type of or that BlackBerry plays in innovation and technology and the modern knowledge economy in the country, and what it means for Canadian business that this big Canadian icon might be sold, and right now it's with Fairfax, but who knows, it may ultimately become a foreign sale. So that's a long question, but I'm interested in the various components of thought you have from your different experiences.
Ian, we're watching it really closely, both from a personal point of view, and that I was the Minister of Communications who paved the way for the opening up of mobile telecom in Canada for personal communications devices. And so I have a very deep personal interest in this. I'm talking to you today from my BlackBerry. We all depend on it in our day-to-day lives. So many businesses depend upon BlackBerry. And BlackBerry is a member of the national board of the Canadian Chamber. David Patterson is a member of our board and keeps us very much up to speed in terms of developments. If you look at the contribution that has been made and is being made to Canada by BlackBerry, it is enormous, both in terms of the jobs and the revenues it generates, but even more importantly in terms of the intellectual property it develops and the people it trains and inspires. It is a tremendous powerhouse, a tremendous engine that creates sparks where people move off from working for BlackBerry, start their own businesses, and they build into substantial businesses on their own. It creates critical mass. And I don't have to tell anybody in the Waterloo region how important it is within that high-tech triangle that we have in the area as a driver of economic growth and development, but it's important to all of Canada. So we're very supportive. We understand that there are issues that the company itself and its board have to work through in terms of how it restores itself to profitability. It's clear that the company is going to look quite different from the way it's looked in the past. And all that we want to do is to do everything we can to be supportive and to help to ensure that it continues to be a success in Canada.
Great.
Our heart goes out, certainly. There will be layoffs. Yeah. Clearly, a significant number of those will affect the KW region. Your heart goes out to everybody who's involved in that. Yeah. We experienced something similar in Ottawa, obviously, in the days of Nortel, where there were layoffs. What was striking to me, though, was the number of ex-Nortel employees who went out, started their own businesses, and who today are contributing enormously to the high-tech economy that we have in the National Capital Region. Yep. I think what we'll be finding in Waterloo Region as well is that many of the people who may be leaving BlackBerry may be looking at how do we create our own businesses, identify a niche that needs to be served, and start a new business as well. And the government needs to be very supportive of that and to help out in any way they can.
Yeah, and we do see a lot of that, and that's what we call it, the hub and Communitech and all the startups in this community. So anyway, Perrin, thanks so much for I know that you did this safely. You pulled off to the side of the road, called us on your BlackBerry, and we appreciate you doing that. I'll look forward to seeing you in Kelowna on Saturday.
Ian, we'll try to supply good weather for you, and I think we're going to have a great weekend.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Beattie.
All the best.
Perrin Beattie, the president of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, has been our guest. You're listening to Business, powered by Save on Energy on 570 News.
Business to Business, powered by Save on Energy, a presentation of 570 News. Watch the live video webcast at 570news.com. We'll return with more Business to Business. Just what you know. It's who you know. Connecting community through business. This is Business to Business on 570 News, powered by Save on Energy.
Welcome back to Business on 570 News, a very special edition, as Greg and Ian are joining us live from Kelowna, BC, where they are in attendance at the annual general meeting of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. They're in the Delta Grand Okanagan, and welcome back to the show, gentlemen. I understand you've got a guest with you.
Well, we do. Certainly, the Governor General is speaking very short, but...
All right, we seem to have lost the connection there. All right, we'll see if we can get reconnect with Greg and Ian in their hotel room. Perhaps we'll get Adam to place another call to Greg and Ian, and failing that, I can get them to call us. Greg DeRocher, president of the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce, and Ian McLean, president of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce, in the live on location at the Grand Okanagan Delta Hotel in Kelowna, BC, where they're in attendance at the annual general meeting of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. It's the Chamber Network's must-attend event of the year. At the AGM, various members of chambers from across the country get plugged into the latest developments, trends, and issues that are important to the Canadian business community, and develop solutions that will break down, ideally, the barriers that are holding Canadian businesses back, setting their policy agenda for the upcoming year. And if you want to find out more, you can go to their website, the Canadian Chamber's website. That's www.chamber.ca. That's the Canadian Chamber of Commerce website. For more information on goings-on at the Greater KW and Cambridge Chambers of Commerce, you can check out their respective websites, greaterkwchamber.com and cambridgechamber.com. Ian McLean and Greg DeRocher, presidents of their respective chambers, the Greater KW and the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce. And I'm sure they will have, going forward, much to say about the goings-on at former Research in Motion, now BlackBerry. It's been a very tumultuous week for the company, as we've been telling you here on 570 News, as a number of developments have put the company in the spotlight, and we are certainly not done discussing the goings-on at BlackBerry, and we encourage you to keep it on 570 News as we follow that developing story. We're back on the line now with Greg and Ian. Hi, guys.
Hey, how are you? We're happy to be joined by Ken Cobley, who's the president of the Alberta Chamber of Commerce, and while I had a little air difficulty landing in Kelowna last night, I'm glad to be here now. But what I found interesting was yesterday I saw the Calgary Sun headline or front page, and it was filled with pictures of the floods from 100 days ago. Again today, that's the theme this weekend, is 100 days after the flood, and how it's the Calgary, but all of that area has been transformed. And you can see that a lot of progress has been made, but there's still lots to be done. So we're going to ask Ken to kind of give us an update of how things are for business and the community as a whole, and what are the things that we can do to kind of support what's going on, because your area is such a huge economic engine for the country.
I mean, certainly the community's really responded. Right across Canada, folks have helped out. Certainly folks in the Chamber Network, we put out the call and we raised over $78,000 to sort of reestablish our community chamber in High River. They were totally wiped out. Mm-hmm. We had 5,200 houses in the community. There's 4,700 of them that are in need of repair of various stages. Most of the business community downtown basically has to be totally rehabilitated. Mm-hmm. They have to determine where the floodplains are, where it's likely to reflood. Certainly, that puts a strain on our economy. Yet again, Alberta has unemployment numbers that are the lowest in the country. Parts of Alberta are sitting at 2.9. Mm-hmm. So pretty much any skilled tradesperson that's in the province of Alberta is working on the rehabilitation in High River. But also on the other projects, the mega projects that we've got on the go, and certainly the ones that have been announced.
Well, it's interesting. You and I were talking quite a bit the other day. Ken had talked about in High River in particular, what the real problem was. The river came up, it flooded into the bowl of the community. The river went down, but the bowl didn't go down. Yeah. And you talk about the devastation, certainly devastation, but then how coming out of this with all of that activity, there's going to be a real surge in the economy and maybe a problematic surge where you got 2.9% unemployment in certain areas.
That's
virtually zero.
That's zero unemployment. I mean, at 3.9, it's considered to be that everybody who wants a job has a job.
Yeah.
So as I say, we got parts, and you really wouldn't expect to have low unemployment. I mean, community like Camrose, for example, which is just outside of the city of Edmonton, it's got a population of about 80,000 people, very high seniors population, and their unemployment rate is sitting at 2.4.
Yeah.
So you don't have to go to Fort McMurray to find a job. You don't have to go to Fort McMurray to find a labor shortage. This whole flooding, with High River was one of the hardest hit.
But there were other places where
I mean,
how many communities? Like, give a sense of how many communities were affected.
Primarily in the Bow River and the Elbow River.
Yep.
Those ones, High River was affected by the Sheep River. As far south as Medicine Hat had dramatic flooding. But the major, like ground zero, if you're looking for flood impact, was in and around the Calgary area. Downtown Calgary, for those who saw it 100 days ago, was, I mean, think of the amount of water that's in the Saddle Dome when you're up to row 10 in the Saddle Dome. Now, having said that, like the economists were talking that, this may have an economic impact, a drag on the economy in Alberta, because you've got all these folks who are out of production.
Yeah.
Having said that, the province of Alberta has put, all steam ahead to help business.
And you sat on a committee, I think.
We did. The Alberta Chambers was appointed to the Southern Alberta Flood Recovery Task Force 4 days after the event. We talked to our person on the ground, our manager, which is something unique for Chambers. We are the only business organization that has community, provincial, and federal representation. So we have people on the ground who can give us the province or the feds need. And we drew upon that. We found out immediately from the manager that, hey, Wi-Fi wasn't working. We need to get some service down there. Only analog situation. So we got right on with the province and said, hey, we need some mobile units. We got the province to increase the eligibility for the disaster recovery program, which is a federal-provincial agreement, which only covered businesses up to 20 full-time employees. We immediately looked at it and said, this is not going to work. Our definition of a small business is those businesses up to 50 employees. So that was one of the things we targeted. The other thing that we targeted was to get the government to bring into place an interim financing type of procedure where the checks could go out to the businesses immediately so that they wouldn't have to wait for the province to flow disaster recovery money or insurance money.
All right, you're listening to Business on 570 News, powered by Save On Energy. Ian and Greg in conversation with Ken Cobley. He is the CEO of the Alberta Chamber of Commerce. As Greg and Ian and Ken talk to us live from the annual general meeting of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in Kelowna, BC. We're coming back with more right after this.
We'll be right back with more Business to Business, powered by Save On Energy. Call in with your questions at star 570, 570-2545 or 1-800-570-5715. Not just what you know, it's who you know. Connecting community through business. This is Business to Business on 570 News. Powered by Allstream. All local, all relevant, allstream.com. Here's your host, Glenn Pelletier.
Welcome back to Business on 570 News, powered by Save On Energy. Ian McLean, president of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce, and Greg DeRocher, president of the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce, live from Kelowna, BC, where they are attending the annual general meeting of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, calling us now from their hotel room. They've been on the line since noon, and joined in their room by Ken Cobley. He is the CEO of the Alberta Chamber. And, gentlemen, some opportunities certainly exist for Ontario businesses to make connections in Alberta. Let's continue on that theme.
Well, we're extremely excited. I had an opportunity to talk to Ken earlier, and the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce, Greater KW Chamber of Commerce, along with EMC, the MIN, Center for Family Businesses, should really be taking a really close look at what we're going to talk about right now, and that's Ken and I talked about the difficulty that businesses in Alberta are having at getting suppliers and needs for manufacturing, automation, tooling, all kinds of things. And Ken, grabbed me as soon as I came there, and he says, we got to get together. We got to start talking because we need to knit our businesses together. So, Ken, talk a little bit about that and how we can help you.
Well, picture this. We're going through flood recovery in the southern part of Alberta. We have major projects that continue to be announced. There's an upgrader that has just been announced for $8 billion around the city of Edmonton. We have major construction on as far as apartment buildings, condos. We already had an aggravated labor shortage. We will have to see more of an aggravated shortage. We're offshoring a lot of our manufacturing simply because that's where we found suppliers. Why not? Should we not have that manufacturing going to parts in Canada?
Well,
it certainly would mean
there's capacity.
If there's capacity, and what we would like to see is if there's folks who have supplies, things that they do, services that they provide.
Within manufacturing,
let us know, and we can match them up.
Well, this sounds like last year at our manufacturing summit, and we're doing that again this year with the partners that Greg mentioned. I think it sounds like a perfect opportunity to actually you've actually got business that can be signed when we find the right partner in Ontario, and whether that means coming out here and setting up shop here or doing some of that work in Ontario, either. There's opportunities for Ontario business
most
to make
definitely.
money.
You take a look at where the oil sands currently source a lot of their production. A lot of their production is offshore. They're bringing stuff from Korea, they're bringing stuff from China, from all over the world.
And they're finding the quality and the logistics are not up to standards.
They're not up. In a lot of cases, they're not up to good Canadian workmanship that we're used to.
Yeah.
And as far as logistics go, it's a heck of a lot easier to get a part manufactured or a piece or a vessel manufactured in Eastern Canada and have it shipped to Western Canada than across the ocean.
I know Ian's really excited about this too. As soon as I told him about it, even before Ken got to the room here to do the interview, and his eyes were big, and this is something that really where a Chamber of Commerce can really pair businesses together and
economic growth.
Yes.
And never, whether it's in Ontario or Alberta, never underestimate the power of the network.
Yeah,
exactly.
We have 126 chambers in the province of Alberta that go right from the deep south of Alberta, right far north to the Northwest Territories border, east, west, urban, rural. These folks need product. They need things made for them because they can't find the labor at home.
You are listening to Business to Business on 570 News, powered by Save On Energy. Ian and Greg in conversation from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce Annual General Meeting in Kelowna with Ken Cobley. He is the CEO of the Alberta Chamber of Commerce.
Well, we've had your colleague Jim Prentice speak to our chamber several times, and he actually 3 or 4 years ago, when I first started, really pointed out that there's lots of opportunity for Ontario manufacturers, that advanced manufacturing, the pipes fitting and the skilled trade. So this is great news for our neck of the woods, but I think good news for you too. You're going to need this to keep your economy pumping along, and so we'll look forward to working on that as it relates to the Min Summit and making those business connections.
Yeah, I think sometimes we've talked about it, but now I think what Ian, what really, we're sitting here with Ken, who's almost begging us to join with them and help build some business. We're just going to have to go into our communities, grab them by the hand, and drag them along the way and say, look,
use our network too.
And use our network.
Bring your order book.
Yeah.
Come see us and bring your order book with you. Come sell us.
How do you like that, Glenn? Can you imagine that?
I like it. I would like to ask Ken a question. The Leafs just made a trade with the Flames. What do you think of the Flames' chances this year?
Okay, as the president and CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, I have to be apolitical on this one.
You like Edmonton and
Calgary? I like them equally, both the same. I would say to you though that this conversation, I was ready for the question about what I thought about the Eskimos and Argonauts football game last night.
I went to bed after the second quarter. What eventually happened?
Are you kidding me?
No, they came back. The Argonauts laid a beating on them the second half. 32 unanswered points or something.
The Eskimos snatched defeat from the jaws of victory.
Yeah.
No,
by the way, Ken, you had a former political career. You want to tell Glenn what you did before?
Glad to. I spent 20 years in municipal council in a small community outside of Edmonton, a community called Beaumont, 4 terms as mayor. Loved every minute of it, but also told my wife that when I retired from that, I made her a 2x4 that was about 2 feet long, carved a handle in it, put my name on it, and said that if I ever talk about going into municipal government again, to hit me squarely between the eyes.
I think Ian and Greg had similar conversations.
I had those conversations.
Yeah.
Continue to apply wood until feeling passes.
Well, we got to probably get down with the Governor General speaking as we're sitting here.
Right.
So,
Gentlemen, thanks for your time today. Ken, thank you very much. Ken, thank you. Ken Cobley, CEO of the Alberta Chamber of Commerce, joining Greg and Ian in conversation as they attend the annual general meeting of the Canadian Chamber. About a minute to go, guys. Anything going on at your local chambers?
Well, this is taking up a lot of oxygen, so it's just trying to get here.
Ian actually, his flight was coming down and had to be aborted, and so I think he was a little rattled this morning. He called me immediately when he landed again last night in Calgary, and then this morning. But what was really funny was he says, I got an 8 o'clock flight, and of course the show aired here live at 9 o'clock in the morning. He thought he was going to get here a little bit late for the show, but then failed to remember that they're an hour behind in Calgary. He actually got here at 8 o'clock in the morning, not 9 o'clock. So we made things happen. But, Glenn, as you know, that's what we do. 570 News, Cambridge Chamber of Commerce, Greater KW Chamber of Commerce. We make things happen.
All right. We're going to talk more about the goings-on at the Greater KW and the Chamber of Commerce on our next program. We want to thank our guests, Ken Cobley, CEO of the Alberta Chamber of Commerce, for joining us, Perrin Beatty as well, and, of course, our good friend Johnny Finch from the KW Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro. Blue Jays baseball is next on 570 News. I want to thank Adam Rochon for producing the show today, along with Catherine Drake. You've been listening to Business on 570 News, powered by Save On Energy. Thank you very much for listening. Ian and Greg, have a great rest of your weekend, and we will see you again next Sunday for another edition of Business, powered by Save On Energy on 570 News.